What if the entire story we've been told about success is wrong? From a young age, we hear the same advice repeated everywhere. Start something from nothing. Build your own company. Create your own idea. Work harder than everyone else. And if you're lucky, maybe after 10 or 20 years of struggle, you'll build something valuable. It's inspiring. It's heroic. But when you study how the most powerful people in the world actually build wealth, you start to notice a completely different pattern. Because many billionaires don't build their empires, they buy them. Curiosity. Think about this for a moment. If you had $1 billion today, would you spend the next 10 years trying to build a company from zero? Or would you simply buy a company that already works? A company that already has customers, already makes money, already has systems and employees? The answer may sound obvious, but most people never think about wealth this way. The hidden game. There are two types of players in the world of business. The first type is the builder. Builders create new ideas. They launch startups. They invent products. Without builders, nothing new would exist. But there's another type of player operating quietly behind the scenes, the acquirer. Acquirers don't start the fire. They wait until the fire is burning, and then they buy the entire forest. Example strategy. Look at many of the largest business empires in the world. They are not built from one company. They are built from dozens or even hundreds of acquisitions. Instead of betting everything on a single idea, these investors buy companies that already have proof. Proof that people want the product. Proof that customers are willing to pay. Proof that the business model works. And once they own the company, they improve it. They improve marketing. They improve pricing. They improve efficiency. Suddenly, a small business becomes a global machine. The real advantage, starting from zero, is extremely risky. You don't know if the market wants your idea. You don't know if people will trust your brand. You don't know if the business will survive the first year. In fact, most businesses fail, but when you acquire something that already works, you remove much of that uncertainty. You're not buying an idea. You're buying evidence. Evidence that the market has already spoken. The billionaire mindset. This is where the mindset changes completely. Most people ask, what business should I start? Billionaire investors ask a different question. What business already exists that I can own? And that single shift in thinking can completely change the trajectory of wealth. Because ownership scales. Time does not. The power of leverage. Imagine two entrepreneurs. The first spends 10 years building one company. The second spends 10 years acquiring and improving 5 companies. Who ends up controlling more value? Who ends up with more influence? Who ends up with more income streams? This is the power of leverage. Instead of relying only on creativity or effort, you rely on capital and strategy. Engagement question. Let me ask you something. If you had the opportunity today, would you rather create a new company from scratch or buy a company that already generates millions every year? Think about that for a second, because that question sits at the center of modern wealth strategy. If you enjoy learning the real strategies behind wealth, power, and luxury empires, make sure you subscribe, because on this channel we don't chase motivation. We analyze how the world's most powerful individuals actually build their fortunes. How acquirers think. When elite investors analyze a business, they aren't thinking emotionally. They don't ask, is this my dream? They ask, does this produce cash flow? They analyze numbers, revenue, margins, customer demand, operational efficiency. They ask simple but powerful questions. Can this business grow? Can costs be reduced? Can prices be increased? Can this system scale globally? If the answer is yes, they move quickly. Key luxury industry lesson. The luxury industry provides one of the clearest examples of this strategy. Luxury brands often have something extremely valuable. History. A brand that has existed for decades or even centuries carries cultural power. Customers don't just buy the product. They buy identity. They buy prestige. They buy status. When investors acquire these brands and modernize them, they unlock enormous value. Ownership versus recognition. Another important difference between builders and acquirers is motivation. Builders often seek recognition. They want the world to know they created something. Acquirers care less about attention. They care about control, because control determines who captures the value. The public sees the brand, but behind the brand sits ownership. And ownership is where real wealth lives. The portfolio mindset. This is why the ultra-wealthy rarely think in terms of a single company. They think in portfolios. They own multiple businesses, multiple income streams, multiple industries. If one company slows down, another grows, risk becomes diversified, wealth becomes stable, and over time, those assets begin to compound. Long-term thinking. There is another difference between ordinary investors and elite capital. Time horizon. Most people think in months. Some think in years. But the wealthiest investors often think in decades. They don't ask, how much money can this make this year? They ask, will this still matter 20 years from now? Because businesses that survive decades often become unstoppable. Final insight. Once you begin studying ownership patterns, you start to see the world differently. You stop focusing only on brands. You start asking who owns the brands. You stop focusing on companies. You start asking who controls the companies. Because power is rarely visible. It sits quietly in the background, inside holding companies, investment groups, and strategic acquisitions. Final question. So here's the question that really matters. Are you thinking like a creator, or are you thinking like an owner? Creators build value, owners control value, and in the long run, control determines scale. Ending. The world will always celebrate the person who starts something, but the world is quietly shaped by the people who own what already works. Sometimes the fastest way to the top isn't building the mountain, sometimes it's buying it. Outrow. If this video changed the way you think about wealth, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Would you rather build a company or buy one that already works? And if you want more deep dives into billionaire strategies, luxury empires, and the hidden mechanics of wealth, subscribe to the channel, because the next strategy we break down might completely change the way you see money. I'll see you in the next video.